each of these artists that are still successful today were considered gimmicks. So when Run DMC and LL Cool J and the Beastie Boys started, all the record companies looked to develop the records, make the money, and they assumed that the artists would be disposable. So we came into the business with the mindset that the artists were forever and the records were disposable.
Let's clear this up once and for all, the whole Dame Dash, Jay-Z feud. You know, that's been out for a long time. I know you spoke on it before, but where did this come from, and what is the status of it?
Well, if you see people like me and Dame, we'd be together every day, because our drive was for Rockefeller. You know what I'm saying? So we ain't have anything else to do. So we'd be together every day. Every day, our waking day, we was worried about doing something else to make Rockefeller grow. In the beginning, we'd jump in the van, we'd go to Maryland, we'd go anywhere. You know what I'm saying? And now we got our focus everywhere, different things. There's Rockaware, there's state property, there's Armadale, there's
The major record companies are always on the lookout for new talent. Nowadays, artists are discovered on the internet, on social platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube. Today, it's easier for an artist to be recognized by a major record label, because in the past you needed a strong connection to get to these kinds of labels that are responsible for promoting your music and distributing your songs on streaming platforms. There are a handful of top competitors in the music industry who claim the vast majority of well-known musicians and groups, as well as countless subsidiary labels with even more signees. It's easy to know the three biggest names, and from there it gets a little confusing. In this video, I will only talk about Universal Music Group, which is the biggest record label in the world. Record labels that are part of the Universal Music Group include Interscope Records, Geffen Records, Capitol Music Group, Republic Records, Island Records, Def Jam Recordings, and many more. In addition to the labels mentioned, there are many smaller labels that are signed under these labels. However, in this video I will only talk about two record labels that have helped hip-hop gain worldwide recognition. Universal Music Group, often abbreviated to UMG or simply referred to as Universal Music, is a Dutch-American multinational music corporation incorporated under the laws of the Netherlands, with headquarters in Hilversum, the Netherlands, and an operational headquarters in Santa Monica, California. It is the largest music company in the world and is one of the big three in the music industry, along with Sony Music and Warner Music Group. The origins of the company date back to the founding of the American branch of Decca Records in September 1934. The name and company logo came from Carl Laemmle's Universal Pictures. In 2021, Universal Music Group generated annual sales of $10 billion. That's impressive when you look at the pie chart, as the company employs over 8,000 people and has offices in dozens of countries. Universal Music Group is owned by even larger companies, with Vivendi and Tencent each owning part of the brand. In recent years, Universal has worked hard to keep up with the changing music industry, releasing digital and streaming offerings first and looking for new revenue streams with their vast library of musicians. Interscope Records was founded in late 1990 by Jimmy Iovine and Ted Field as a $20 million joint venture with Warner Music Group's Atlantic Records and Interscope Communications, and differed from most record companies in that it left A&R staff in control of decisions and gave artists and producers full creative freedom.
Define what an A&R does, because I think that people who are just watching this, who might not be involved in the music industry, they hear that term so much they don't really understand what it is.
So A&R has multiple things that you have to be good at. So a lot of people think A&R is just hearing a song on the radio and be like, that's a good song. Or I saw an artist and he's dope. What people don't understand is once you sign that artist, you have to help them put their project together,
right?
Make sure that they have the right songs to put out. Then you have to deliver that album. That means get your artist to give you the project to be like, this is it. I'm ready to go in the public with it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Jesus.
Interscope's first release was Rico Suave by Ecuadorian rapper Gerardo in December 1990. The single reached number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart in April 1991. 2 days after hearing his demo for the first time, Wally signed Tupac Shakur in August 1991, and in November Interscope released Tupacalypse Now, Tupac's studio debut. However, Interscope's success with alternative and rock music was overshadowed by a controversy that began in September 1992 when Vice President Dan Quayle asked Interscope to withdraw Tupacalypse Now because it was responsible for the death of a Texas police officer who was shot and killed in April of 1992 by a suspect who was allegedly listening to the album on the cassette deck of a stolen lorry, when he was pulled over by the officer. The police officer's family filed a civil suit against Shakur and Interscope, claiming that the album's violence-glorifying lyrics. In early 1992, Interscope negotiated a $10 million deal with Dr. Dre and Marion Suge Knight to finance and distribute their Death Row Records label. It was initiated by McLean, who met Dre when he was recording his solo debut The Chronic. Originally, the album was to be released through Sony, but Sony rejected The Chronic because of the crazy things that were going on at Death Row and Dr. Dre's contract status. After hearing the album, Iovine agreed to release it, although this required a complicated distribution agreement with Priority Records, Dre's label, as a member of NWA. The Chronic was released in December 1992. By the end of the following year, The Chronic had sold almost 3 million copies. Snoop Dogg's debut Doggy Style sold more than 800,000 copies in its first week alone, and Primus and 4 Non-Blondes released records that reached the US top 20. In 1993, Interscope was more profitable than expected, with estimated sales of $90 million. In May 1995, the controversy over gangsta rap and explicit lyrics intensified when U.S. Senate Majority Leader Bob Dole accused Interscope of releasing music that glorified violence and degraded women. In September of 1995, Time Warner announced it was distancing itself from Interscope by selling its half-share in the company to Field and Iovine for $115 million. In February 1996, Universal Music Group, then owned by Seagram, bought 50% of Interscope for a sum of $200 million. Under this deal, Interscope retained complete creative control over the label's recordings. In November 1996, Interscope became the first label in 20 years to occupy the top 4 spots on the Billboard charts with records by Bush, Snoop Dogg, and Tupac Shakur. 6 other Interscope releases were in the top 100. The label was often criticized for spending too much money on artist acquisitions and joint ventures. However, with an estimated turnover of $250 million in 1996, the label made a profit. Dre left Death Row Records in mid-1996 due to the frequent violence at the company and formed Aftermath Entertainment, a new joint venture with Interscope. In November of that year, Aftermath debuted with the album Dr. Dre Presents the Aftermath, but the album flopped, but Iovine and Ted continued to work with him because of Dre's talent. The Death Row deal remained in place until 1998, when Knight was imprisoned for parole violations. Most people thought it was all over with Interscope Records after the demise of Death Row Records, but in February 1999 Interscope and Aftermath released the Slim Shady LP, which was produced by Dr. Dre. The album entered the charts at number 2 and won 2 Grammy Awards. In 2002, New York rapper 50 Cent signed to Interscope through Shady and Aftermath with a $1 million advance. 50 Cent's major label debut album Get Rich or Die Tryin' was released on February 6, 2003 through Interscope. The album sold 872,000 copies in 6 days and went 9 times platinum in America. Universal Music Group's parent company, Seagram, acquired Polygram Records. Interscope Records continued to sign artists such as DaBaby, Kendrick Lamar, Moneybagg Yo, Ray Shremmerd, Machine Gun Kelly and others. In total, about 100 artists are signed to the label. But you know that running a business is not easy because there will always be some people who complain about your services, such as on March 15, 2015, Kendrick Lamar's album To Pimp a Butterfly was released on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play 8 days before its scheduled release date, March 23. Top Dog Entertainment CEO Anthony Tippett blamed Interscope for the unintended release of the album. The album debuted at number 1 when it was officially released, and in January 2023, a sexual abuse lawsuit was filed alleging that Interscope and its now-defunct subsidiary Nothing Records knew about the sexual abuse Marilyn Manson committed against a girl in the 1990s when he was signed to Nothing Records. Def Jam was founded in 1984. By then, Simmons was already a manager and promoter, steering the careers of rap solo star Kurtis Blow and the charismatic trio Run DMC, which included Simmons' brother Joseph. Simmons grew up in Hollis in the New York borough of Queens, and as a youth was involved with gangs and sold drugs, though not to any significant extent. He stayed close enough to the streets to be in just the right place when hip-hop emerged. Meeting Rick Rubin, who became his co-founder of Def Jam, formed the oddest of couples. As a 21-year-old aspiring record producer from the suburbs of Long Island, Rubin was keen on anything confrontational and loud, be it punk, metal or rap. He was still a student at New York University, receiving demos in the mail and meeting up with up-and-coming talents like LL Cool J in his teenage years. Success came quickly. Within 3 years, LL Cool J was hip-hop's biggest star. Def Jam hosted the most exciting and innovative group, Public Enemy. The Beastie Boys managed to conquer the pop charts with their multi-million seller License to Ill, produced by Rubin, and the influence on the culture in general grew. There were bumps in the road. Rick Rubin left the company back in 1988, although he is now so revered as a producer that Time named him one of the world's most influential people in 2007. In 1988, Russell Simmons' management signed one of the few prominent British rappers of the time, the late Derek B. And Nation of Millions was Def Jam's first release, bought by a young DJ Semtex. He insists that Public Enemy educated him as much as the school system. Semtex also helped set up the UK branch of Def Jam in the early 1990s and worked in A&R. In 1992, despite the recent multi-platinum releases of Public Enemy in EPMD, Def Jam ran into severe financial difficulties and were on the verge of going out of business with Sony. In 1994, Hologram bought Sony's 50% stake in Def Jam Recordings and brought the label into the fold of Island Records. Island shared distribution and marketing duties with selected radio projects, while Def Jam remained independent in all other areas of the label, A&R, video, promotion and advertising. The label enjoyed great success with a number of other multi-platinum releases from Montel Jordan, Public Enemy, LL Cool J, Redman, Method Man and many others. RAL Def Jam also distributed Violator Records' signed artist Warren G's debut album, Regulate. G-Funk Era, which went triple platinum and gave Def Jam much-needed revenue through the joint deal with Violator. Hologram acquires an additional 10% stake in Def Jam, further strengthening its ownership of the label. Shortly thereafter, the Rush-associated labels were renamed Def Jam Music Group. The label remained profitable when LL Cool J released his successful album Mr. Smith in 1995, a return to the rapper's original credibility after the failure of his 1993 album 14 Shots to the Dome. In June 1997, Def Jam acquired 50% of Rockefeller Records for an estimated $1.4 million, giving co-founders Jay-Z and Damon Dash part ownership of the label, while Def Jam maintained distribution and co-marketing. In 1997, Def Jam signed Rough Riders artist DMX via A&R of Gotti. DMX's first studio album, It's Dark and Hell is Hot, was released on May 12, 1998 and was co-produced by Irv Gotti. The album reached number 1 on the Billboard Top 200 and sold more than 250,000 copies in its first week. The album sold 4 million copies in America, was certified quadruple platinum by the RIAA, and sold 5 million copies worldwide. DMX then recorded another album for release in the same calendar year. DMX's second studio album, Flesh of My Flesh, Blood of My Blood, was released on December 22, 1998 and peaked at number 1 on the Billboard Top 200. The album sold over 670,000 copies in its first week and went on to sell over 4 million copies. DMX claimed that Def Jam earned $144 million from the sales of his first 2 albums. In 1998, Hologram was bought out by Universal Pictures' former parent company, Seagram. It later merged with the MCA group of record labels. In early 1999, the label group was renamed Universal Music Group. It then bought the remaining stake in Def Jam Recordings from Russell Simmons for a reported $100 million. Also in 1999, the label began distributing releases from Murder Inc. Records, the newly formed label of former Def Jam A&R manager and record producer of Gotti. Artists on the label included Ja Rule, Ashanti, and Lloyd. Murder Inc. Records' first release under Def Jam was Ja Rule's debut studio album, Veni Vedi Vecchi. The album, released on June 1, 1999, reached the top 3 of the Billboard Top 200 and went platinum in America. On October 10, 2000, Def Jam and Murder Incorporated released Ja Rule's second studio album, Rule 336, building on the success of the singles Between Me and You and Put It On Me. The album reached number 1 on the Billboard Top 200. In January 2003, Murder Incorporated became the focus of a money laundering investigation involving illicit profits from drug trafficking, which eventually led to the label being released from its distribution contract in 2005. Def Jam also prevented Murder Incorporated and TVT Records from releasing a Cash Money Click reunion album. The last shares of Rockefeller Records were sold to Island Def Jam for $10 million in 2004. Co-founders Damon Dash and Biggs were forced out of the label. This led to Reed appointing Jay-Z as president of Def Jam on December 8, 2004. LL Cool J, DMX, and Joe Budden expressed their discomfort with Jay-Z's leadership of the label and have since left the label altogether. Under the leadership of Jay-Z, Def Jam launched the successful careers of contemporary R&B singers Rihanna and Ne-Yo. Let us not forget that Jay-Z also introduced Kanye West to the world by releasing his first solo album, The College Dropout. But in late October 2022, Def Jam ended its partnership with Good Music, Kanye West's label, in response to the founder's online and public media outbursts, including his 2024 presidential campaign, as well as his anti-Semitic and racially insensitive remarks. However, West had already been banned from the label after the release of Donda on August 29, 2021. Def Jam is the biggest record label ever co-founded by black people and has produced more black artists than any other record label. It has signed artists like Foxy Brown, Bobby Valentino, Redman and many others, and it continues to sign more young talented superstars. Like Interscope, it has a variety of artists on its roster. That is all for this video. Please make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel and press the notification bell to receive more videos.